Hello, everybody, and all my MAM subscribers. Here today, wasn't planning to do a video today, but here today because I saw this article with this inmate that's claiming that Stephen confessed to him. Good Lord. This has happened before, by the way. Not the same guy, but the same story, same situation. Anyways, I'll get to that in a minute. You know that. But yeah, this story, this guy's telling, basically puts a whole new spin on all the events that supposedly happened that night of Halloween 2005. Apparently now Stephen Avery did all the raping and killing of Teresa himself. And Brendan only helped him dispose of the body and stuff, apparently. So it's pretty wild, this story this guy's telling, because number one, it's got some inaccuracies that make it unbelievable. And on top of that, there's the fact that it is so specifically tailored to explain certain things, but yet to explain away certain other problems. It's just very, very uniquely tailored to do that. And even though trying, I don't feel it does it. Well, when we get to the part about the key, you'll see what I mean there. Just doesn't work. Doesn't work in any way, shape, or form. So, but we'll get there, like I said. So, now this story this guy's telling, that number one, there was no stabbing. No stabbing in the trailer. And that he had tied her to the bed using a t-shirt and a sock, which is only two things. He should have had four things. But, yeah, a t-shirt and a sock. Anybody getting the feeling here that this story is meant to try to explain why there were no scratches on the bedposts from the shackles, right? So, this story says it's a sock and a shirt. Can that even work? Can you really seriously secure somebody with a sock or a shirt like that? You think about it, you got to be able to tie a knot, a very secure knot, on both ends, one around the bedpost and one around your victim, obviously. So do you have enough material there to do that? I don't know. Inquiring minds want to know. But anyway, I just get the whole feeling that this story here is meant to explain why there was no blood, or why they didn't find any blood at all, and obviously why there was no scratches on the bedposts. But it's just, if Brendan said it was ropes, now this guy's saying it's a sock and t-shirts, and and Ken Kratz said it was the shackles that he had in the courtroom. There is no reality here. It's just they're just throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing if it sticks. So it's obvious that this narrative just continues to change and morph because it's bad. It's not a good narrative. It doesn't work, and so they keep trying to change the narrative. I say they, but when I look at what Colburn said about the cabinet. Look at that, and how he said how that happened. And they keep coming out with these statements, that are trying to explain away some of these odd incidents that happened in the Avery case. But in my opinion, just buries them further, and I will get to that in this video here in a minute, particularly Colburn with the cabinet. So, anyway, that's just my question. How securely could you fasten somebody to the bed with a sock or a t-shirt? Would you have enough material there to really securely fasten both ends? Anyways, at this point, Brendan comes into the equation. Basically, he comes in, he thinks that Teresa is sleeping, is the story here. That this guy is saying that, Brendan basically only thought she was sleeping. And that Stephen said, "Oh yeah, go ahead and whatever, rape her or whatever, and but hurry up because we gotta get rid of her or whatever, right?" And this doesn't work, because how can you say we got to get rid of her if Brendan just thinks that she's sleeping. So, anyways, so yeah, this guy's something else, and the story just seems odd to me. But to further explain why there is no blood, now this story says that Stephen then tells Brendan that, because he doesn't want to just come out and say she's dead or whatever, so he just kind of grabs the knife and slits her throat, but not very deep. Not very deep. It was only basically a very light swipe, and barely broke the skin, apparently. And this is why there's no blood, right? Yeah. Compared to the scene that Brendan first described, that this is now a story that is coming out. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So I hope everybody realizes how ridiculous it is, because it is. I mean, really, this is laughable. So, anyways, then it comes to the point of them disposing of Teresa's body. Okay, this has never worked for me ever. They pull the RAV4 up to the trailer, close to the trailer, so that they can load Teresa into the RAV4, into the back of it, so that they can then drive her to the garage, that short little distance to the garage. Then they take her in there, and this guy's story is they take her in there, they shoot her twice in the head, twice in the chest, and once in the nether region. So, this guy, if he isn't telling the truth, he is one sick and twisted puppy. Now, granted, he did kill his wife. But, yeah, I mean, that's just disturbing. Because this story seems made up, and that seems made up to me. And the fact that he made that up like that kind of, anyway, that bothers me. So, but anyways, so they take her then from the garage, after shooting her and that. You take her from the garage and they put her back in the RAV4, which then that's how she would bleed into the, her blood would be found in the cargo area of the RAV4. And then they drive her over to the burn pit and put her in the burn pit and start, it says that Brendan put tires on top of her and all that sort of stuff. So, here's the thing. Why was he using the RAV4 to transport her body around? Okay, obvious answer is somebody's going to say, "Oh, because he didn't want anybody to see him carrying a body around." Okay, well, isn't a large automobile that isn't his looking awfully conspicuous driving around on over by his trailer? Isn't that also, conspicuous and odd? I mean, why wouldn't he use something else besides a vehicle that would stand out? Because if he was worried about being seen, why would he do that? So it doesn't really make sense to me. The whole story here seems like it's trying very hard to explain the narrative and to explain certain problems with the narrative. And I don't see it, because it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. Why would you go to the garage and make another scene, another potential scene, another potential place where any blood or DNA or anything could have been found? Why would you do that? Why, instead of keeping it in one place where you had to clean up just one place and not and limit it? No, you go to two different places, and one of those places has 1,000 objects with 1,000 different edges all around, and I mean, to get into every groove and nook and cranny to possibly clean that place up would have been impossible. It just would have been impossible. And so this narrative doesn't work. It really doesn't work. So, that's just the way it is. So now we're going to move on to this damn key. All right. This guy here says that after killing Teresa or whatever, Stephen Avery picked up the things of hers or whatever, the PDA and all that stuff, and he threw it in the fire, right? That's what they're saying. With her. The one that burned her to crematorium level, that fire, that he threw them in with that. Okay. Then, after she had burned and he tended the fire all night, by the way, which I don't care how long he tended. He could have tended it for 2 days. You cannot get that level of degradation on the bone from an open fire. You have to have it enclosed and concentrated heat. It has to be, I believe the number is 3,800 BTUs, to be able to get that kind of destruction on the bones like that. So he could tend that fire all night and ain't gonna make a difference, in my opinion. So, but anyways, after the fire burns out or whatever, they said he started breaking up the bones, is what that Stephen told this guy. He started breaking up the bones, took the shovel, and started picking up shovelfuls and just throwing them all around, like scattering them, just as, like throwing them or whatever. But then, at the end, all the PDA and the phone and some bones were there together or whatever. He picked that up and shoveled it into a burning barrel. A burning barrel. You see the problem with that, right? Because those items were found in 2 different burn barrels. So the fact that this guy is saying that they got shoveled into one burn barrel doesn't work. It's farcical. It doesn't work. So, and like I said, I don't care how long Stephen was tending that fire. It wouldn't matter. You can't do that with an open fire. An open fire cannot burn that hot. Then we move on to the subject of Orville Jacobs. Now, some of you may be thinking that, law enforcement or the authorities couldn't plant somebody. But it sure seems that they can, because they did in fact plant somebody when Stephen Avery was on trial. They planted a guy in his, holding area or whatever, the where he was in custody during his trial, by the name of Orville Jacobs. Orville Jacobs was there solely to try and get information from Stephen Avery. He's basically like the town drunk. He gets arrested and has to spend a lot of time in the holding cells and stuff, apparently, or whatever. And he had some things going, and he had some cases pending or whatever. But he wasn't, at the time, he wasn't supposed to be in jail. There was no reason for him to be in jail, and yet he was there. And he was meeting with Mark Wiegert, like, periodically, and Mark Wiegert was coming over to check and see what he may have found out from Stephen and stuff. So, can't say it's above them, because they've done it, and there's proof that they did it. So, that's yet another thing that makes this guy hard to believe. Just hard to believe, It's for many reasons, obviously. For number one, because the story is too uniquely tailored to explain away certain problems and to corroborate certain pieces of evidence. And there's the fact that he's just, there's certain points he's got wrong, like the burn barrel thing. That doesn't work. That doesn't work because it went into 2 different burn barrels. So him saying that Stephen shoveled that stuff up afterwards and put it into a burn barrel, like he's trying to explain why certain things ended up in burn barrels instead of just in the fire pit, right? Like it's like if he was trying to make up this story that he thought might help LE, so that maybe LE that law enforcement would help him somehow or something. I don't know, but it's like he was attempting to, but because he's lying, he didn't get it right, in my opinion. So, like I said, 2 different burn barrels, so not just one. And he clearly claims it went into one burn barrel. So, anyways, so we move back to the key here. This guy says that Stephen had put the key into his pocket of his flannel, like his chest pocket. And that when he went inside or whatever, he'd taken the flannel off and he just threw it onto the nightstand or whatever. Well, apparently Orville is saying that the key had fallen out of the pocket and fallen in between the dresser and the bed. Okay. Anybody else seeing the obvious problem with that? The dresser and the bed? That's number one. The key is on the ground and on the wrong side of the dresser. So, how does that work? Anyways, it doesn't. because when you think about it, Andy Colburn already came back and amended his basically sent some emails to the district attorney's office there in Manitowoc trying to explain the stuff about the key back in I think it was July or something like that. He decided to speak up, and he was sending emails to the district attorney in Manitowoc saying that no, this key was not planted, and here's how it happened. And he explained how that when he shook the cabinet, that the key came tumbling out of it because there was a section on the back where the back paneling of the cabinet was separating from the wood, like the side panels of it or whatever. So there was like this gap, and that the key somehow came out of there, landed about 3 inches to the side, and then about an inch or two forward of the back of the cabinet, with the key and the lanyard both pointing away from the cabinet. So that's pretty hard to do if it's just like falling out of the cabinet, hitting the boards and stuff as it's slipping out through that hole in the back, and then managing to land, a few inches away with the key flopping away from the cabinet and the lanyard flopping away from the cabinet. So, that's doesn't work for me. But even if that's true, well, then this guy's lying, because there's no way the key could be in between the dresser and the bed if it was in the cabinet somehow wedged in there, and that it got shook loose when Colburn came up and shook it, and that when he shook it, it came falling and tumbling out. So basically this guy's statement doesn't work, but neither does Colburn's. But the fact that this guy is trying to suggest that the key was on the ground on the opposite side of the cabinet, how does that work? How does it end up, if it's there, getting over to where it was found? So anyways, that's all I got to say about this subject. I just wanted to say that I think it's a complete load of crap. So I think this guy is, I don't know, maybe trying to garner goodwill from the state and the law enforcement, possibly that arrested him, or he's maybe trying to plea down to a lesser sentence or something. I don't know. I'm imagining there's something in it for this guy, because like I said, this story is tailored, but it's badly tailored, but it's tailored. It's trying to specifically do certain things and to explain certain things and whatnot. But I think in trying it really creates other problems in trying to explain certain things. So anyways, I'll let you guys judge for yourself. I'll leave the link to the article obviously down in the information below, and that's about it. That's about all I gotta say about this subject. So anyways, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll talk to you later.